Great. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for those of you not in El Paso. My name is Bonnie Perez Ramirez, and I am the director for Partners Resource Network's PEN project. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. We serve parents of children and youth with disabilities ages 0 to 26. And we also work with youth self-advocates who are aged 14 to 26. The Parent Training and Information Centers are funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. As I said, in Texas, there's 4 PTI projects. We have the PAC project, PATH project, the TEAM project, and we have PEN project. And PEN project serves ESC regions 9, 12, and 14 through 19. It's a lot. We have PRN's mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special health care needs. Some of the ways that we can help parents is understand the child's disability, understand your rights and responsibilities under IDEA, find resources and connect you with organizations and companies like the one that is with us here today, Consolidated Planning Group. And it's, for me, it really truly is an honor because I've heard of this organization for a long time, and I'm really glad that we were able to schedule these sessions for our families here in West Texas. And even though we have from all over the place, but I'm very grateful for your time, Allison, and I appreciate the information that you are going to share with us. So go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much for having us today. It's certainly a pleasure to be back with you. So a couple housekeeping things. I always tell people your cameras and your audio is muted, so we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. And we do want you to put your questions in the chat box today throughout the presentation. She's going to be monitoring that chat box, and she'll read out those questions to me, and we'll get to just as many questions as we can. We're going from 12 to 1 today, so if you're trying to keep track of time or lunch hour or what have you, we'll be finished by 1 o'clock. Everybody is going to get a copy of today's slides and a copy of the recording. We'll get an email out later today or tomorrow with that information, so you can take notes, but you don't have to take notes of every slide because you will get a copy of those slides. And so just because we did have somebody in the chat box that said that they were from out of state, I just wanted to say that we're going to be talking about Medicaid waivers today, and we are specifically talking about the Medicaid waivers that are available in Texas. However, there are Medicaid waivers in every state in the United States, and they might be named a little bit different, and they may cover a little bit different things, but the general concepts of the waivers and how to find out a little bit more about them and some of the other planning topics that we're going to talk about regarding special needs planning will probably be helpful to you. And then certainly if you're from out of state, we do serve people all across the U.S., not just in Texas. We are located in Texas, but we do serve people everywhere. So if you have a specific state that you need a little bit more help with, we can help you in that way as well. So I just wanted to mention that because sometimes when we have people from out of state, they're wondering if they should stay on or not, or if this would be applicable to them. So I am Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. I am a parent to 4. I have two kids with disabilities and have kind of navigated a lot of these waters transitioning. I basically say I eat, sleep, and breathe this both personally and professionally. We are nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and our firm is, specifically nuanced in special needs. When it comes to special needs, our situation is specialized, and so the care and advice that you get as it relates to this really, really matters in preserving eligibility for benefits, which we're going to be talking about that today. So we're glad you're here with us. Don't be shy if you have questions, put them in the chat box. If you have a question, probably somebody else will benefit from that question as well. So thanks again for taking your time to be with us here over lunch. So all throughout the United States, there are something called Medicaid waivers, okay? So Medicaid waivers, and these are things that Here in Texas, people throw around, are you on the interest list? Is your child on the interest list? Or are they on the waiting list? Where are they on the waiting list? Are common things that people ask around here. And so, but all states do have them, and they, like I said, they're usually called, they might be called a little bit something different, but they all have them. And all of the waivers, when we're talking about Medicaid waivers, that they do require that the child be eligible for Medicaid, and those Medicaid eligibility for most of the waivers are based off of the child's eligibility, not the parents. Because sometimes right off the bat, people think, well, my child's a minor. If it's based off of my income and assets, then the child won't qualify for Medicaid. But some of these Medicaid requirements are different than the Medicaid that comes along with SSI. So we will talk more about that. So we'll kind of go a lot deeper on that. So some of the waivers in Texas, we've got them named here, and we like acronyms in Texas, so we don't just call them by the waiver. We oftentimes use the acronyms. So we've got Community Living Assistance and Support Service. This is called CLASS. Deaf blind with multiple disabilities, DBMD. That's the hardest one to say quickly, DBMD. Deaf blind, multiple disabilities. We've got HCS, which is for home and community-based services, Texas Home Living. We have Medically Dependent Children's Program, also known as MDCP. We have the 1115 Demonstration Waiver, which is a STAR Plus waiver. We have the YES waiver, which is Youth Empowerment Services, and we have Community First Choice. Okay, so these are some of the ones that we throw around. But one question that comes up on a pretty regular basis is, we all know about the list and getting on the list and all of those types of things. But what are these even for? Why do we even want this, or why do we need this? The point behind these waivers is they are designed to waive off some of the cost of care for caring for an individual with a disability. 30, 40 years ago, it was believed that if an individual had a disability, that they should simply be shipped off and institutionalized. And okay, so a lot of things have happened. There's been a paradigm shift of thinking, and what we now believe, and is believed in the community and legislatures and everything like that, is that individuals with disabilities are best. They're at their best when they are in home and community-based services, as opposed to being institutionalized. So these waivers are designed to waive off some of the cost of care associated for caring for these loved ones. They might pay for things like attendance services, respite hours, various types of therapies, and we're going to go into a few more details on that. So going a little bit deeper on each one of these waivers. So we've got the CLASS waiver, and this is home and community-based supports for adults and children with related conditions. There's over 200 related conditions like cerebral palsy, spina bifida. The related condition must have occurred prior to the child is age 22. So deaf blind with multiple disabilities. So some people think if you're deaf or if you're blind, then you can get the deaf blind waiver, but it's deaf blind with multiple disabilities. And this gives services for children and adults who are deaf blind and have a related condition or a related condition that leads to deaf or blindness, or maybe they have another disability as well. Okay. Then we have the HCS waiver. This gives services and supports to children and adults with an intellectual disability or a related condition who live with their families in their homes or other small group homes with no more than 4 people in them. Then we have MDCP. This gives services to children and adults who are 20 and younger who are medically fragile as an alternative to receiving services in a nursing facility. Okay, we've got the STAR Plus Home and Community-Based Services, HCBS. This gives services to adults 21 and over to keep in their community and not in a nursing home facility, and they're offered through a managed care organization. Some of these managed care organizations, they throw around the word MCO and it starts being confusing, but these managed care organizations are organizations such as United Healthcare or Humana, or sometimes the Children's Hospitals, Texas Children's House one. Those are some of the examples of managed care organizations. There's many examples, but to name a few. Then we have our Texas Home Living. This gives services to children and adults with an intellectual disability or related condition who live in their home or their family's home. In general, the definition of intellectual disability, we call it ID or IDD. They'll throw those terms around. They're the same term. It's usually an IQ of 70 or below, or 75 and below with multiple disabilities. The Youth Empowerment Service Yes waiver, this is a 1915C waiver. And so again, the 1915C, they're going to be in other states as well. The 1115 demonstration waiver will be in other states as well. I like this waiver. There's many counties, there's no waiting list for this waiver. It's a Medicaid program that gives home and community-based services to children under the age of 19 with serious mental, emotional, and behavioral difficulties. This is a wraparound program, and I talk a little bit more about this one because I know that since 2020, since the pandemic, mental health challenges have definitely been on the rise. So I do want families to know that this waiver does exist because there may not be a waiting list for this one. So think about, the issue needs to be, the primary issue is the mental health, not the primary issue is the diagnosis is Down syndrome and they have mental health challenges, or the diagnosis is autism and they have low functioning autism and they have mental health challenges. But the mental health challenges, maybe they have some ADHD, but this particular waiver is not equipped for the severely disabled or intellectually disabled. It is more for people with mental health stuff. So think about a couple of things. When we talk about serious mental, emotional, and behavioral difficulties, this is depression, anxiety, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, self-harm. We see the rise in teenagers in the self-harm, suicidal ideation. This might be a child that has run away. Maybe they've been in trouble with the law. Maybe they've been expelled or suspended from school. Maybe they're having some drug issues or things like that. This is an example of who might be a good fit for the Yes waiver. So I just wanted to spend some time. This is a newer waiver. It's not that new, but it's new enough that a lot of people don't know about it. Then we have Community First Choice. We are actually going to do a webinar specifically on this waiver because this is a newer one too, but this allows states to provide home and community-based attendance services and supports to Medicaid recipients with disabilities. It helps with activities of daily living and health-related tasks through hands-on assistance, supervision, or cueing. And it's designed to help the individual learn how to care for themselves. These services are typically offered through an MCO, managed care organization. This is an entitlement. The list isn't very long, typically a year or less on this waiver. So when it comes to some of these waivers, some of the services that are available on all waivers are adaptive aids, financial management services, supported employment, employment assistance, minor home modifications, respite, services in all but MDCP, because sometimes MDCP already includes them. We've got professional therapies such as OT, PT, speech therapy, music, massage, rec therapy, equine, art. The list goes on of the various therapies that these waivers can cover. Unlimited prescriptions, dental, and nursing are some of the things. Now, today, after today's webinar, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to send a copy of these slides, but we are also going to send you a copy. We have a spreadsheet. It's a lot of pages, but it goes over the budgets of these said waivers, because all of these waivers are not created equally. They have different budgets, top budgets, bottom budgets, and it just depends on the overall level of need. Okay, so when we talk about the level of need is going to be assessed when the individual comes up on the list for the waiver, not at the time that they go on the list. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. Some of the other waiver services could include transportation to medical appointments, residential services, equine therapy. They have various, day programs and things like that. So some of these, we have kids that are in day programs our transition programs, and sometimes there is assistance for those programs as well. And it all adds up. We've got families that say, okay, well, we're not struggling financially, we could do this, and that's fine, but we all pay into the system, we're all taxpayers and things, and these things do add up. And it is helpful, and it's not just for now, but for the future, if your child can get a waiver to defray some of the cost of their future care. Our firm does future care cost estimates. A lot of families come to our firm and they say, I have a loved one with a disability, and he or she's going to have care needs for the rest of their life, not just mine, and I need to plan for that financially, but I don't know what that number looks like. And we put those numbers together, and if you haven't had that done, we can help you with that, but those numbers are large. So any bit of help that you can get from a waiver or other sources to defray some of these costs is going to be helpful to your loved one in the future when maybe you're no longer here. So let's talk about the waiver general eligibility. So most waivers are for all ages, for the exception of MDCP, which is for under 20, and Star Plus, which is 21 and older. The financial eligibility. So we have to, when we were talking about Medicaid, we have to stay Medicaid eligible. We have to keep the kid Medicaid eligible for these waivers, because if they lose their Medicaid eligibility, they will lose the waiver. It's not they could, they will. So right now, for all waivers, for the exception of Texas Home Living, for 2022, that number is 2523. Okay, so Medicaid assets in the kid's name need to be under $2,000. They can have income up to 2523 gross earnings per month. It does not look at parental income, okay? So this could be unearned or earned income. Examples of unearned income would be money from an annuity. It could be SSI. It could be SSDI. Those are all unearned. And then, of course, earned income is just that if they are actually working. So individuals must meet the functional eligibility criteria for the specific waiver. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, eligibility is not determined until the individual comes to the top of the wait list. So you can put your loved one on the wait list, but they're not going to check their eligibility or determine, they throw this term around in Texas a lot, LON, level of need. They're not going to determine their level of need until the time they come up on the wait list. Bonnie, how are we on questions right now? Do we have any questions before we move on?
Actually, yes, we do. We have one in the chat box that says, how can we recognize what we should add our child to when we have multiple disabilities and anticipation for significant mental health family history like schizophrenia?
Yes, that's a good question. And what we say in Texas is to add your child to all of the appropriate interest lists that they may qualify. You can only get one waiver at a time. You can't be getting multiple waivers at the same time. So, and you may come up on one waiting list that has a smaller budget than the other waiting list, and maybe you get that waiver for now, but later you come up on the other waiver that has a bigger budget, and then you can switch over to that one. So the problem in Texas, and you guys may already know this, is that there is the wait list is just that. It is a very, very long waiting list. It's a first come, first serve. It's statewide, and the wait can be as long as 17 years, which is pretty long, okay, pretty ridiculous. So you need to get them on the list like yesterday if you haven't already. We're going to tell you how to go about doing that as well. But again, these waivers are designed to promote independence, to prevent or divert individuals from institution. It is also designed to address crisis, and we're going to talk about crisis diversion slots as well. And it also helps individuals that may already be institutionalized transition back to home and community-based services. So, okay. So when it comes to the wait list in Texas, how do we get on the wait list? So the first thing that I want to tell you, the first thing that you need to know is there are multiple wait lists, and how you go about getting on those wait lists is different, right? So I want to tell you kind of about the doors and paths that you should walk through, because a lot of times what families do, they tell us, oh yeah, my son is on all the wait lists, but in when we start checking or peeling the layers of the onion back, they're on one wait list, maybe on one or two wait lists, but they're really not on all of the wait lists. So what is a LIDA or a LIDA, however you choose to pronounce it? This is your local intellectual and developmental disability authority. So in Texas, these are categorized by county. So depending on what county you live in will depend on who your local intellectual disability authority is. This website right here is something that you can copy and paste in to your browser, and you can put in your zip code, and it is going to tell you who your local intellectual disability authority is. So when it comes to getting on HCS, Texas Home Living and Community First Choice, we contact our local authority to ask to be put on that list, okay? So HCS, Texas Home Living and Community First Choice, we contact our local authority and ask to be put on that list. They control that list. Then there's a separate phone number for MDCP, class, and DBMD, okay? And there's also a separate phone number for the Star Plus waiver. So when we're thinking about getting on these waiver interest lists, you're gonna wanna look at all of these three. And this is gonna be different. This is Texas related. So for the folks that are on here today that are out of state, this is gonna be different. We can help you look up the appropriate ways to get on the list in your state. In some states, they have it all under one umbrella, other states do not. So it's a little bit different in each state as it relates to that. But the key thing is to get on the list. And so because inquiring minds want to know, in Texas, there is no website that you can just go put yourself on the list or put your child on the list. There's no username and password to log in to see where you are on the list. It is truly controlled by each of the counties and your local authorities. So what if you're in one county in Texas and then you move to another county? You will have a new local intellectual disability authority, and you'll need to notify your local, the one that you had and the one that you're moving to, so that way they can move you under their umbrella. The good news is even if you change counties in the state of Texas, you're not going to lose your spot on the waiting list, but you just need to let your local authority know. Another question that comes up on a pretty regular basis is, what if my child is getting a waiver and then we move out of state? And that is a very good question. And the answer is if you move out of state, you lose your waiver, because these are state regarded waivers. So just because you're getting a waiver in the state of Texas doesn't mean if you move to California that you're going to get a waiver. And so what I recommend families with kids with disabilities is check carefully when you're thinking of moving or moving to another state, especially if it's because you just want to move there as opposed to we have to move there for a job. You want to check the lay of the land of the state. How long is the waiting list? Like for instance, Florida has a very long waiting list. Texas has a very long waiting list, but there are other states like Arizona. There's a lot of states, across the United States that they don't have a waiting list for some of these waivers. So you want to kind of check that out and do your homework, but just know that you will in fact lose your waiver. And again, vice versa. If you're living in, we'll use Alabama for instance, and you're moving to Texas and you're getting a waiver in Alabama, it means nothing when you move to Texas. You've got to get on the list. You're not going to keep that waiver in Alabama. Okay, so let's talk about a crisis diversion, because we've kind of talked about the sad story about how long the waiver interest list is. There is a such thing as a crisis diversion slot, and basically what this means is that in the event of crisis, there is a such thing of getting a HCS crisis diversion waiver instead of a 17-year wait list you look at right now. Let's get this moved. So what is a crisis? The first point of contact is your local intellectual disability authority and tell them that you'd like to request a crisis diversion. A crisis, there's many forms of crisis for a lot of different reasons, but one would be that the individual is a threat to themselves or others and is at risk of being placed outside the home. So they're a threat to themselves or others at risk of being placed outside the home. There's been many crises where a caregiver has died. One or the other of the parent has died, which was formerly providing caregiving services to said individual. It could also be that one or the other of the caregivers has been diagnosed with a chronic illness and can no longer provide the care services that they were once providing before. That could be something where we have a parent that's had a stroke or a heart attack or cancer or some kind of major illness that has changed kind of their ability to provide those caregiving services. So that can be a reason for crisis diversion. So your local authority is your first point of contact. Every local authority is a little bit different. Again, they're by county. Some are very, very easy to deal with, and some are not as easy to deal with. They have had a high turnover rate of staff through the pandemic, and I guess they're really just not alone. I mean, everywhere's experiencing the same thing of struggling to keep staff and having enough staff. So that is true of our local authorities as well. But if you are in true need of crisis diversion, you can work with us. We can help, kind of bring the people in that need to be brought in. If your local authority, if you're not getting any help there, but they are your first point of contact, and they do try really hard to help you. And they also, all of our local authorities in Texas have a crisis line that runs 24/7. So it's not just 5 days a week, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. But if you do run into a snag and you're not getting the help that you need, there are some other steps that we can take and other organizations that we can pull in to get that moving. And we always say here, we just hope you don't have a crisis, but we know, the families that we work with, we've certainly seen crisis before. So that we have the PASRR, diversion and transition from nursing facilities and or specialized services. That is another one that people don't talk about too much. How are we on questions?
The only one that I see says, how do I know if I am on the list?
Okay, so going back to that page where we have your local intellectual authority, and you can contact your local authority and ask what interest list your child is on. You can call the phone number for the class DBMD and MDCP and find out what list your child is on for that. And if your child is 21 and over, may already be on that Star Plus waiver. You can look at your Medicaid card if they're getting Medicaid to see if it says Star Plus. You may already be getting the Star Plus waiver. So that is the way to go about it. I wish. I always say in my spare time, one day I'm going to create this, right? But I wish there was a website that as parents, we could just log in with a username and password and see exactly where our kid is on the list and how fast the list is moving and things like that. So that is definitely our process of improvement that the state could embark on, but they're not there yet. Any additional questions?
Yes, we have another. It says, my daughter is in the waiting list for class since 2013. She turned 18 this year, and we will apply for SSI. Never before she hadn't received any benefits, even Medicaid. So when the time comes for the waiver, will she receive the additional benefits?
Okay, is that one in the chat box or the?
It's in the Q&A.
Let me see that one set. So when a child turns 18, we are going to talk about SSI in just a second. When a child turns 18, a lot of our kids do not qualify for SSI and Medicaid. So even though our kids are disabled, prior to them turning 18, Medicaid under social SSI is based off of the parents' assets and income prior to the child turning 18. When the child turns 18, it's based off of the kids' assets and income, not the parents. So we do recommend that people do apply for SSI and Medicaid for their disabled child when the child turns 18, and they will basically, if they're approved, they're going to get approved for SSI. SSI is $841 a month. I'm mentioning that. We're going to talk more about it. But if your child is getting SSI and they're not working and you're not getting $841 a month, you're getting closer to $561 a month, you need help. You need help with a rent agreement, so that way you can get the amount pushed up to the $841. But we will talk more about that. Qualifying for SSI and Medicaid through the SSI program is not going to deter them from qualifying for a Medicaid waiver in the future. So to answer that question, many people, many of the individuals that are getting a waiver in the state of Texas are also getting SSI and Medicaid, and in some cases SSDI and Medicare, and in some rare cases they're getting a little bit of SSI, a little bit of SSDI, getting Medicaid and Medicare, that does not affect their ability to qualify for the waivers as well. So that is a great question. I'm not sure we've had that question before, so I appreciate it. Any additional questions before we get moving?
Yes, one more. It says, which waiver programs do not have an age limit?
So basically all of them except for Star Plus and MDCP. There's no age limit on any of them. MDCP is for kids. That's the medically dependent fragile children, and Star Plus is for 21 and over. So Star Plus is not for children. And then a lot of these waivers, again, they are looking, not all of them, and again, other states may be different. They're looking for an individual that has an intellectual disability with an IQ of 70 or below, or 75 and below, with multiple disabilities, but that is not true for all of them. I do see somebody that said, where can I find the financial table to see if we qualify for SSI? I know that it is income-based. You can email my team. We have a document for that. It's pretty low, and basically what you need to know for SSI, for a household, you can have one house and you can have one car and no more than $2,000 in your name. So that puts most people out pretty quickly. One house, one car, and no more than $2,000 in your name, above and beyond, the house and the car. They're not counting the house and the car as the $2,000. So that's basically the general, but we do have a worksheet on that. But as far as the budgets are concerned for the waivers, we are going to go ahead and send you guys the spreadsheet for the waivers and kind of the budgets and what they cover and stuff like that, because that's helpful. And it looks like we're sending you something outdated. It's the most recent one, and it's dated 2018. So we are expecting an update to this soon. It's not our deal. It's just, what the state has put out there. So we'll send that to you so you can kind of look at the waivers and the criteria in that spreadsheet along with today's slides. So when it comes to special needs planning, what are some of the things that you need to know? So first things first, we always suggest that you work with a special needs planner to help you formulate a plan. There's 250,000 financial advisors in the U.S. and less than 150 in the U.S. are nuanced and special needs. So we do recommend that you work with a special needs planner. We have the same licenses that other financial advisors have, but we are nuanced specifically in special needs, Social Security matters, and other matters pertaining to maintaining, state and federally funded eligibility for various programs. So one thing to also know when you kind of start the planning process is the difference of a special needs planner and the difference of basically a special needs attorney or a state planning attorney. A lot of people call us every week and say, I need guardianship, or I need a special needs trust, or something along those lines. And we work very closely with attorneys all across the state, and we're happy to make a recommendation of a quality attorney that works with special needs, that their prices are fair. We know they do a good job. But we kind of summarize what they do and what we do is we're the money and they're the paper, the legal documents you need, whether it's guardianship, partial guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. In Texas, we have something called a supported decision-making agreement. Those are all documents that the attorney can work with you on. And they're also going to work with you on the special needs trust, first party and third party trust. There are various places that you can have money above and beyond the $2,000 for SSI. But they're few and far between, and there's a special needs trust and it's an ABLE account. We'll talk about both of those. But so they're the paper, where the money, the legal documents you have to have, but the special needs trust isn't worth the paper that it's written on if we don't have a plan or know how we're going to fund it in the future. So we help people with the Social Security analysis that which identifies exactly how and when to pull the trigger on your benefits, maximizing benefits for the whole household. We help people with the future care cost estimate. How much does it cost? How much should I set aside? How much should I plan for my loved one who will have care needs after I'm gone? We help with all of those things and the funding of the special needs trust. So when you get started with the planning documents, we want you to gather all the necessary planning documents. What does this look like? This is everything that you already have in place. This is your wills. This is your Social Security statements. Any statements that you have of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, life insurance outside of employers, life insurance with the employers, any type of benefits that you have for long-term care, any of those types of things. Those are the planning documents. We also recommend, and we do have a template for this, a letter of intent. I think we have an upcoming webinar, I think it's actually this week, about a letter of intent, what it is, and why do you even need one. A letter of intent, in short, is kind of a family love letter. As parents, we eat, sleep, and breathe our kids. We know them like the back of our hand, what makes them, thrive, what makes them melt down, who their doctors are, what meds do they take, what are their diagnoses, what schools have they attended, all that kind of stuff. But if something happens to you and you're incapacitated, you can't talk, or you're no longer here on this earth, who else knows all of this information? And sometimes in some households, even the spouse doesn't know everything that the other spouse knows, because the spouse works outside of the home and the other one is acting as caregiver. So sometimes we don't bother each other of the details of some of that kind of stuff. But if something happened to the caregiver, we want the other person to be able to pick up that document and be able to know what they need to know without having to tear the house apart or a file cabinet apart, is the bottom of the car, the trunk of the car, all the places people put documents to figure how things out are. So we do recommend that you have a letter of intent. This is something that we really recommend that you do kind of like an electronic version, or maybe a Word document or something like that. So that way you can edit it a couple of times a year as things change with your child. Some of our kids have, diagnoses that don't really change that much, and others have very fluid situations that are changing frequently. So updating this is definitely important. But we also want you to think about your vision of how you hope things will look for your special needs child, but even more importantly than that, how they will look for you in your future, in your retirement. If we have a loved one that's going to be with us for the rest of our life, they don't grow up and go to college or get out of the house or things like that, our retirement looks a little bit different. So thinking about balance and thinking how you want that to look for yourself, I think, is an important place to start. And having that balance, because as parents and caregivers, we're so busy putting everybody else in front of us. Sometimes we don't take care of our own needs, and our health fails as a result of that. Bonnie, do we have a question?
Yes, we do. Someone is asking, does it need to be marked by an attorney?
No. The letter of intent does not need to be created or marked by an attorney or signed or anything like that. This is, we have a form fillable document that we share with our clients. It's 20 pages, and it kind of just leads you through the information that should be on there. And then there is a free space to write, more specific things or other specific details that you want to share with somebody. So this document, all the other documents, and I'm glad that you bring that up, because I just want to take a moment and say that I am not a fan of DIY legal documents, of, do it yourself wills and things like that. A lot of times there's mistakes. Yes, the internet is powerful and you can download a lot of things, but when it comes to a special needs trust, things like that, they need to be drafted according to your state laws. And that's why we're not even fans of working with an attorney that isn't not nuanced in special needs. They make mistakes, is what they do. They're smart, they go to law school, but they're trained in what they're trained in. So if they're trained in contracts, or they're trained in, business law or something along those lines, they're not nuanced in special needs. And their documents may fail to have the language that is necessary to be constituted a special needs trust in the eyes of the Social Security Administration. And let me just tell you, that matters. So I'm not a fan of hiring your attorney neighbor next door because they're going to do it for you for cheap or for free. Or your brother or whoever. I am a fan of working with an attorney that is truly nuanced and specialized in special needs. Your situation is specialized. You need a specialist when it comes to this stuff. And what you'll find if you don't use a specialist, you'll end up having to pay somebody else to redo these documents in the future. Okay, we got a question?
Yes. Do you have a template we can use for the letter of intent?
Yeah, we do have a letter of intent template. You can reach out to our organization for that. That is something that we do share with our clients. We do offer a free consultation. We'll have that information out there at the end. But we definitely do have a template. There may be some additional templates online. You can create yourself. The only thing I say about, again, creating it yourself is that you should do it on a Word document, like I said, so you can edit that. So when it comes to funding of your child's care in the future and what are we looking at, we want to preserve the eligibility for state and federally funded programs. We were talking about waivers earlier. All these kids have to maintain their eligibility for Medicaid, okay? So it's important that we have money in the right buckets for these things. So let's talk about it. We talked about there are two places that you can have money above and beyond the $2,000 allowed for Medicaid. These two places are a special needs trust and an ABLE account. So a special needs trust, there can be two types of trust. One is a first party special needs trust. An example of first party money is the kid's earnings. It could be a settlement that the kid received because of an accident or medical malpractice or something like that. That would be a first party special needs trust. There is a Medicaid payback on that at death of the individual with a disability. And then there is a third party special needs trust. The third party special needs trust may also be called a supplemental needs trust for the individual. And there is no Medicaid payback on this. You can have an unlimited amount of money in these trusts. There is no limit to how much you can have in there. So this is an important part to planning. So when we're thinking about our kids and their future, and you've got a future care cost estimate, and you know how much it's going to cost for their future care, and we want to plan for that. How we leave money to our kids matters, because leaving money directly to your kids. So let's say your kid's name is Johnny Smith. We don't ever want to leave Johnny Smith as a beneficiary on anything we got, not life insurance, not investment accounts, anything. We want to leave it to the benefit, to the special needs trust for the benefit of Johnny Smith. And then it goes into a special needs trust, can be used for the benefit of Johnny, but will not be counted against him for Medicaid purposes. This is really, really important. And this is something that families make mistakes on all the time. This is also something that where you're working with an advisor that's not nuanced in special needs, they don't think or know about these things. They're not thinking about SSI and Medicaid waivers and all of the things that come along with that. So the other place that you can have money above and beyond that $2,000 that SSI counts is an ABLE account. So an ABLE account, we do have presentations on all of these topics specifically for these. So if you want more information, like I said, we have one for the letter of intent, one for the ABLE accounts. We have one for special needs trust, one for guardianship, where we go in greater detail on all of those topics. But an ABLE account is organized under the tax code 529A for ABLE, and you can contribute $16,000 a year and an additional $12,880 if the individual is working, but the disability had to begin prior to age 26, okay? And we never want the ABLE account to go over $100,000, because if there's more than $100,000 in the ABLE account, then that would be counted against them for Medicaid purposes. So SSI and Social Security, that in itself is kind of like the 10,000-pound gorilla that we could talk the whole time about, SSI and Medicaid. So SSI is a means-based program. It comes along with Medicaid. SSI is for the disabled and the indigent. So the reason a lot of our kids, although disabled, don't qualify for SSI prior to turning 18, again, is because it's based off of the parents' assets and income prior to them turning 18. This is for SSI and the Medicaid that comes along with SSI only. I'm not talking about other Medicaid programs. There are 107 or 109 Medicaid programs in the state of Texas, so there are many. But right now, I'm just talking about SSI and the Medicaid that comes along with that. So it's for the indigent, less than $2,000 in their name, and the disabled. And right now, SSI is $841 a month. I believe it's this week, maybe Thursday, that they're going to be announcing what SSI is going to, what the COLA, the cost of living adjustment rider increase is going to be for 2023. They're expecting it to be relatively high. So that's going to be announced, I think, this week. So SSI is $841 a month. And then let's talk about Social Security, because a lot of people say, well, my kid's getting Social Security. But what they really mean is that their kid is getting SSI. Now, it is true that some kids are getting Social Security for a variety of reasons. Social Security is also known as SSDI, Social Security Disability. So Social Security Disability, and SSDI are kind of all under the same program. This is a different program. It's not based off of the indigent and disabled. This is a program that you pay into. So some of our kids will never work and they never pay into the system. When you look at your Social Security statement, you see your quarters. How many working quarters do you have under your Social Security statement? Well, if we have a child that has never worked or is never going to work, they never pay into that system, so they don't have any quarters. So when you first apply for SSI and Medicaid, they also apply you for Social Security Disability and Medicaid. And the first letter that you get is the rejection of Social Security Disability in the mail and Medicare. And people are very upset about that because they can't believe that they rendered their child not disabled. Like, what are you even talking about? What do you mean you denied that? You're actually getting that denial, rightfully so, if your child has never worked. That's why you're getting that denial. If you or the child's parent is not either on Social Security Disability themselves or Social Security retirement, and the child has never worked, they are in fact not eligible for Social Security Disability and Medicare. But what that letter doesn't tell you is that the SSI letter and Medicaid letter is going to be following, okay? So they look the same, but the SSI letter is a totally separate letter. So what we want to do is we want to establish that our child's disability, if it did, started prior to age 22, okay? So as I was talking about Social Security and I was explaining that we pay into the Social Security system for our retirement, that one day that when we retire, we're going to turn on Social Security for our own benefit. When we have a child that has a disability that started prior to age 22, when we turn on our Social Security, either through retirement, through disability, or through death, that disabled child will have a right to 50% of our benefits. So I'm going to just do a quick example here. So let's say I'm a parent. I turn on my Social Security retirement. I have a disabled adult child who disability started prior to 22. Let's say that my Social Security retirement payment to me is $4,000 a month. Under this program where our disabled adult children, now called childhood disability benefits, can be covered under our record, my child would be eligible for $2,000 a month. So if they were already getting SSI $841 a month and Medicaid, they would then switch over to SSDI, our retirement survivor disability income, and switch over and start getting the $2,000 a month. After 2 years, 24 months, they'll be eligible for Medicare. They will keep Medicaid under the Pickle Amendment, so they'll be dual eligible for Medicaid and Medicare at this point and switch over to the RSDI. And so I know that's a mouthful, but again, we have a whole webinar on this topic, but it is very, very important to understand that establishing that your child's disability started prior to age 22 is important for them to be able to be covered under a parent's record for Social Security disability in the future upon the parent's death. So if you have a disabled child under your record and you pass away, then the child's benefit will be increased to 75% of what the parent's full retirement age benefit was. Okay, so I think we have another question.
Says, I'm very confused with the transition now that my daughter is 18 at school. At school recommended a group of persons that will give us a tutorial for the understanding, but I'm afraid there's also a long wait list.
Yeah, we work with families on transition. There is a long wait list on some of those services. If you're going through like Disability Rights Texas, there are organizations throughout the state that if you are indigent, they provide services for guardianship with discounted prices or free. Galveston County, for instance, has a free guardianship program, and it's not for the indigents. It's for people who live and reside in Galveston County. They have a grant there. but we provide a free initial consultation, kind of get a lay of the land. Everybody's situation is so different. So when we have a webinar with so many people on it, their situation is a little bit different. But we do exactly that. We help people kind of align their steps. Where are you? Where do you need to go? What are the first steps that need to be taken, and kind of help with that. And we're also fans of, obviously it's never too late. So, we're always, happy to say that we're glad you're here. It's never too late to start the planning process. You don't have to think that you have to be, independently wealthy or affluent to start the process. You got to start somewhere. And in order to reach our goals and kind of the high needs of our care, the future care of our loved ones, it's not a matter, I always say, don't beat yourself up. It's not a matter of looking back of what you haven't done or what you don't know. It's a matter of, of moving forward and just taking that next step. So be encouraged. We always hope that our webinars are encouraging, and we want to equip you, to be an advocate for your loved one, which we know you are, and to equip you with the tools and resources that you need to be successful to kind of learn this. Because I know firsthand, and I tell this a lot, so if you've heard it before, I apologize, but these webinars were really born out of my own frustration as a parent of how difficult it is to transition, and transitioning with my own kids. I eat, sleep, and breathe this. This is what we do for a living, and the whole process is unnecessarily difficult, and the wait lists are long, and people don't call you back, and it's just very frustrating. And just even how to apply for SSI. We walk people through all of that. How to get on the waivers list, how to apply for SSI. We give people step-by-step instructions on what to do. We talk about various programs that are out there, such as VR, on closing the gaps to impediments to employment. So that way, if your child may have some impediments to employment, that there are programs that are state and federally funded programs to help your child get to work and close those gaps, whatever those may be. So we help with all of that and provide guidance in that area as well. As for the individual counties and their waiting list for supports and stuff, I can't say on that. All I know is that this country is in a crisis of being understaffed. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about food service, or if we're talking about the Social Security Administration or your local intellectual disability authority. It's not just in Texas. We're seeing it all across the United States. So, we're having to, kind of adjust ourselves as it relates to that as well. Do we have an additional question?
Yes. But this chart be sent to my email.
Yeah, so we're gonna send the slides, and we're also gonna send the spreadsheet for the waivers as well. We are definitely gonna send that. These are the things that I have on the screen right now. These are things that should be on your special needs planning radar. We do have webinars on every single one of these topics. I put our YouTube channel in the chat box. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. It doesn't cost a thing. There's over 200 webinars out there, so you can kind of peruse the topics that might be of the most interest to you right now for the kind of the step that you're on with your loved one. So just check them out, because these are all things, and this looks like a long list, and it looks scary when we're, when we got a kid that's 15, 16, 17, 18, they're turning 18 next week or tomorrow. It feels really scary. But there's a lot of information out there. When we have these webinars, we partner with other organizations. We partner with attorneys that talk about the process and what to expect and what do you need to do and what do you need to know, and all of these things. And I know that, at the top of the list for a lot of folks, if they have a child that's turning 18, is guardianship, partial guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision making. These are all things. But what I want to tell you, don't be nervous. Just know, again, we're happy to, make a referral to any of the, attorneys in your area that might be a good fit for you on this. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know, I want guardianship or I want partial guardianship. You don't have to know that. The attorney's going to talk to you about your child's functionality. They're going to talk to you about the process, what might be best. The law in Texas, and again, I'm speaking for Texas in this regard, is when it comes to guardianship, it's the least restrictive, most appropriate for the WARD. They call it WARD. I hate that word, but anyway. the least restrictive and most appropriate option when it comes to guardianship. A full guardianship is going to take all of their rights away. They won't be able to vote. They won't be able to get married. They won't be able to drive. Partial guardianship may allow them the ability to drive, to get married, to vote, and some of those things that a full guardianship will not allow. And then, of course, there's such things as power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. So they'll walk through all of those things with you if you've been wondering. And like I said, you don't have to know everything about everything. You can just know that they're going to walk you through that. I do see something in the Q&A. It says, my son with autism's dad died, and when I pass away, his older sister said she will take him in, and we currently have a supported decision-making agreement now. Do we have to have this in a will if I don't have guardianship? No, it's going to be a lot bigger than that. That is a great question. But in that regard, if your child is an adult, an adult child with a disability, that there's no guardianship or partial guardianship, supported decision-making agreements, power of attorney, and healthcare power of attorneys die when that individual, if the individual dies, obviously, but if a parent dies, a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney can be revoked at any time by that individual. And it is suggested if an individual has an intellectual disability, in order to have a supported decision-making agreement, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, that individual needs to have the capacity to understand what they're signing, or it very, quite honestly, may not even hold up in a court or in a hospital or in any situation that you want it to hold up in. So it is important to have those conversations with a qualified attorney to find out what might be the best option. If we have a kid that has adversarial tendencies or angry or they run away and things like that, they can revoke that power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney at any time, and there's nothing you can do about it. So in your particular situation, if you have this supported decision-making agreement and you die, there's no guardianship and no partial guardianship. Your daughter can say that she's going to take him, but if he's unwilling to go with her, there is nothing that anybody can do unless somebody goes and gets a court order to have his rights either revoked or partially revoked in a partial guardianship or guardianship. And we've run into this a couple of times this year with other families that did not have the appropriate documents. Not everybody needs guardianship, and every attorney that works in special needs will tell you that. That's why they're designed to walk through that with you. But having, those successor arrangements, it's not even just a will, because an adult person, I can't say where my adult child is going to live after I die if they're an adult and they have not been deemed like incapacitated. So that is an important matter that does need to be addressed. Okay, so we've got our YouTube channel in the chat box. Thank you, Bonnie, for doing that. It's certainly been my pleasure meeting with you guys today. Check out our YouTube channel for these other webinars. We always like to say, hey, meet our team. We work on a collaborative team at Consolidated Planning Group of professionals, again, nationally certified Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We also offer free consultations. So if you've been out here and you're saying, oh my gosh, I don't know what I don't know, or I need help with these things, I need a future care cost estimate, the Social Security analysis, we can help you with those things. We offer a free personalized consultation. You can kind of take a picture of that QR code, and it'll take you to a calendar page where you can schedule a Zoom appointment with us to where we can learn about your story personally, and we can make recommendations that way. So as always, it has been my pleasure, meeting with you today, and nice to be back with you again, Bonnie. I look forward to connecting with you again soon, and I hope that everybody has a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. You will be redirected for a brief survey. I would greatly appreciate your feedback. And our next webinar with Allison will be on should I open an ABLE account on November 16th? So you all will be receiving that information.
One more thing that I wanted to mention, once you guys have signed up for a webinar, our team will send out an email once a month of our upcoming webinars for the month. We never want to be a bother. We're too busy to be a bother to people, but we do put out our webinars once a month, so you can register for those. There is one coming up on October 26th, and it is our residential panel webinar. This is a good one. This is the second one of the year, but it's with different homes, different places, okay? So if you're looking for residential options for your loved one across the state and want to know about them, it's kind of like a speed dating for residential options. They're going to talk about each place is going to say, they're going to talk for about 3 minutes. They're going to say who we are, where we are, who we serve, what we do, how much we cost, and whether or not they are covered by waivers. And so I tell families this is a good one to attend because most families are really busy and they don't have time to learn an hour thing about every residential facility out there. But this, in an hour, you'll get quick, fast, and in a hurry, the Cliff Notes, and then you can make a note of the ones that you want to visit their website or maybe go take a tour of. So this one is valuable. The residential panel number 1 is already on our YouTube channel, so you can listen to that one. So thanks so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to coming back and talking to you guys again soon. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye now.